You see my slides?
Yeah, it's a very clean looking Venice, Max.
Yeah. So, well, this is already the point. Maybe this is the kind of like new normal. Um, you don't need to be alarmed. I'm not going to talk 30 minutes straight. I just want to share some food for thought up front and a huge disclaimer. I'm absolutely no expert on it. I can only tell that this is the cure. But talking about the new normal, I mean, as all of us, life changed dramatically. In my case, literally, I was put in quarantine from the authorities because I had my last business meeting. Someone got infected, and in Germany, like, you're then informed by the authorities. So I was literally put under house arrest. And this was Friday the 13th. And yeah, ever since I'm basically at home. And
Well,
as
you
all of us,
justifiably did stack your loo rolls then.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, all of us experienced, like, this work from home thing. And what I experienced with my clients and with friends and the network, it made a huge difference for companies whether they were already have implemented some kind of agile work methods or not, if they had a modern IT infrastructure or not. So literally what I experienced is anything from people where it didn't make any difference whether they're working from home or the office. And of course, the total opposite, some companies weren't able to work for many weeks. But what I also experienced is that, I mean, of course, not everyone was ready to work. I mean, what do you do when you have a small a flat, and when you have kids, and with the whole homeschooling? So I think many of us discovered these kind of limitations, and of course, we had to deal with it. And also, I mean, literally not every job can be simply done from home. Homeschooling, I've seen massive differences whether you have a modern infrastructure or not. And if you put these things together, like this work from home plus the homeschooling, I think it's just like also a huge test for relationships. Biz travel, of course, has come down to a complete stop. And what I experienced is that literally everyone has now been exposed to some form of video call. And as a fun fact, and it's really, for me, it's staggering that the current market capitalization of Zoom is higher than Daimler and Lufthansa combined. I mean, it's just like very crazy times if you put this into consideration. Of course, no tourism. I guess we all miss out a lot on culture, and I'm pretty sure every one of us has tried out some kind of like online format. Um, what I've thought was like amazing to see is in these days you had things like Travis Scott within fortnight. I mean, over 12 million concurrent streams. I guess this is like a wake-up call to traditional media to see these things currently happening. The YouTube clip alone racked up about 10 million views in a few days. Social distancing has become the new norm. We all know this, the kind of hamster, and I already made my jokes about it. And as Amit said, yeah, probably we have to tokenize it at one point in time. I think what we also currently discover is that we, reconsider our very personal hierarchy of needs. And we're really confronted with this because I think it's from 1943, the hierarchy of needs. And most of us are doing really, really well. So probably we've been somehow between level 4 and level 5, between the esteem and the self-actualization. And I think every one of us just has been pushed down to literally thinking about very concrete level 1 stuff, like, yeah, physical stuff. Masks has become a new normal, and my sister lives since many years in Japan, and what I've seen there, what's very usual there in day-to-day life, I mean, it has to be more unusual for us. What's also interesting is like these private insights. So I just assume every one of us has gained completely new insights into our surroundings, of our colleagues, of our partners with these Zoom calls, because you always get a little bit of like this background impression of someone. So this whole virtual background stuff has of course become a huge thing. Just this is like mine. As a matter of fact, in the middle, top, bottom, middle, I mean, there are even now ways that you can have like a goat or animals invited to a Zoom call. It's became even like a new business model. In Germany, there is a zoo offering this, that uh, like that you can integrate their animals. And speaking of animals, we've seen some crazy stuff happening all over. So, you know, animals taking over parts of the city again. Um, Again, bear with me. It's just another few minutes, and then I want to open up the dialogue, the conversation. What really struck me is to see how interconnected it all is. And I mean, we're all global citizens, of course. I mean, we know that it's a global world. But for me, it's these little things, these little, you know, to see what's happening, these interconnections. So one example, if you don't have sports, if you don't have soccer, I mean, there is no betting. And the huge betting companies like Bwin, like Tipico, etc., they are one of the biggest advertisers in Germany. So if there is no sports, there is no betting. So there is no advertising money going into online. So there is a huge drop in online advertising just because there is no games. The same is true for content. I mean, you have websites focused on sports. If you don't have any sports, of course, they don't have any content, and their ad spendings drop, etc., etc. I think we all been hit by, you know, the cancellation of conferences, trade shows, etc. But you know, these whole interdependencies. I mean, something like an event like South by, it's not only, you know, that these big companies are not only going there, it's about the little restaurants, the Airbnbs, and everyone just gets affected by something like that. And if you take it into consideration, something like Oktoberfest, I mean, it's easily said like, oh yeah, this year is no Oktoberfest for Munich. It's like a 1.3 billion loss for the city of Munich. But we also seen, of course, great solidarity from big companies. I love, for instance, this example that you're currently seeing. It's from Foster Architects in London, and they you know, came up with these laser cutted face shields, and they made it all available, like all the blueprints, etc., etc. Um, you know, we've seen amazing crowdsourced innovation stuff like these scuba masks being hacked into ventilators, etc. This is a German B2B initiative where like bigger companies are giving out free software, free tools. So to give a very concrete example, Wirecard, they're handing out these contactless payment terminals to, for instance, businesses that are open, like bakeries, for free. So they can offer get now cashless payment, contactless payment for free. You know, new accelerators, etc., etc. But you know, of course, I guess we all kind of like really start missing out our old life. So this is actually a funny picture. I hope you see it all right. Am I doing okay so far, by the way?
Very good.
Yeah, very good, Max.
So
I love
you
this.
know,
Love this photo.
you know this photo, and I think most of us have seen it on Facebook. When I saw it the first time, yeah, I'll see a big stage and lots of people, and I really miss the festival, you know, concert going days. And then you realize, damn, it's not a festival, it's not people, it's actually harvesting crops. So somehow our psychology really hits us back. I love this one. I don't know if it's playing the video.
Yeah, I saw that.
yeah, people really becoming very creative about the things we're currently missing in real life, and they're trying, as good as we can to adopt these kind of new lives. That's the last thing to quickly show it, because I think it's just hilarious. How with a little bit of water and soap you can make your homemade treadmill. So at least what I hear daily when I talk to people is this saying like, yeah, once we get back to normal. And I'm starting to wonder, well, what is actually this new normal? I mean, but more interestingly, what is it actually that we want from this new normal? And for me personal, I mean, there's like three reality checks. Number one, I mean, there is probably not going to be a vaccine within the foreseeable future. I mean, everyone else saying something like in 3 months. I think it's an overestimate. And the reality check too is, I mean, this will not be the last virus, nor will we be sure that there will be other mutations of it. And finally, we must not forget the way bigger picture, which is behind that. And that is not only the upcoming financial hit that we all will suffer tremendously, but the bigger thing behind that, around climate change, which to some extent, I think, many media outlets simply have forgot that there is something even bigger coming up. So, if I'm asking you right now, if you consider how does these following pictures feel like? Something like this. I mean, is it something that we really wish back to have? How would we feel about this, or how do we feel about that? Or, I mean, even if it's possible in 3 months, is it really, are we able to enjoy this? When is the next time we're going to enjoy this? When is the next time we're going to enjoy this? And yeah, I'll miss it too. So a quick food for thought. This is really interesting. I loved it, and I don't know if you know this. There has been a study. So a couple of years ago in London, there was a big strike for the subways. So people were forced, and as you know, in London, I mean, people are really forced to take the transportation a lot, and they spend a substantial amount of time. And what happened was, with the strike, of course, everyone was forced to take new routes. So it might be that for 10 years you were taking, the same tube, but now you were forced to take a different route. And there was actually a study that almost 15% afterwards stuck to this new route they were taking due to the strike. So you see my point. Just because of the strike, we've been forced to take a different direction. And 15% actually figured out, hey, wait a second, that's actually way better than my old one. And they stuck to this new route. So for me, this has become, kind of like a metaphor. So once we go back to the new normal, maybe we experience some stuff about this lockdown that we want to continue to do. I mean, taking care of our personal health is something that, of course, I think will stuck with us as an investment trend. I think telemedicine, digital health will be one of the biggest areas that we will see. But just reconsidering business travel, like this question, how, when, where will we travel? I think this will stick with us for a long time. Um, this whole work from home is like accepted, but of course there is a big question marks to that. How can we ensure team building? How do we strengthen work relations? How can we be creative? And what I experienced over the last couple of weeks is, I mean, ensuring work-life balance, because I mean, I literally have calls with people and they having their lunch at the same time, and I'm like, dude, you should take a break and take your lunch now, and not be on a call with me. But also, how do we ensure that we have these kind of serendipity moments? There's like going to the coffee machine and talking to a colleague. I mean, how can we do this in a virtual call? How can we How can we, support teams, engage with them, etc.? Do we have a resilient leadership in place? Um, and especially what I'll see is this will be for the foreseeable future a big importance in management to have those kind of like leaders in place, the agile mindset. I'm just wanted to finish it. It's just another few minutes, and then I'm really curious on the dialogue. um, I think these days, of course, every company have discovered their disadvantages in their IT infrastructure, how what their processes and tools in place, and of course they have to future proof that in the coming weeks. Another thing that struck me is that, like, of course, in the Western countries, for us, is a handshake something that dates back like really thousands of years, and it was always a sign of like, hey, I do you no harm, I don't carry a weapon. But this, of course, isn't true anymore. And for me, it's almost like a weird question, but who can we trust? I mean, how can you trust the other person about the personal hygiene? So I guess we will see a bunch of new business etiquette. I think it will be more and more common that we that we stop the hugging and do more of the bowing or the fist bumping, or the Vulcan greetings or whatsoever. How do we engage with social distancing as a part of daily life? And will mask wearing be a typical picture that we will see in Western countries as well? But then again, new questions come up, like what kind of masks will we wear? What is actually a decent mask? And even down to what about, like, I mean, beard. I mean, I always was wearing a big beard. I mean, it will have some implications for that. Other stuff is like, how do we envision to go back with our city environments? I mean, do we want to go back where we just allow the cars in? So there is beautiful concepts in Milan, in Paris, taking away parking lots, taking it away from cars and giving it to pedestrians, to bicycles, etc. Um, Entertainment of the future. I mean, what will that look like? How will we pay in the future, etc.? And it's just like something, because of the previous session, of course, how real will crypto assets become as something that we will rely on? Um, will e-commerce, will we just see like one winner at all? And this is really my final slide. And sorry, it took me a bit longer than I was hoping for. I mean, that's of course the $1 trillion question. What will it actually take to restart the economy? Here in Germany, there is a lot of discussion around universal basic income. What will tax breaks do? Will we have loans, etc., etc.? And I'm super curious to hear your thoughts now, because at the end, I always push myself to be an optimist, and in every crisis, there must be new chances. And for me, it's really comes down to what is it actually that we can do better, because that is definitely a stepping point for a new chance and with new opportunities. So thanks for bearing with me. I hope this was a bit, hopefully you found some food for thought around that. And go ahead. Curious to hear your feedback.
Max, that was Max, this is Amit. That was really, really nice. I think you captured both visually and your storytelling a lot of the thoughts that we're all having in this context of the new normal, right? And I think to just emphasize some of the points you brought up, I think we're going to have on one aspect, that there will be a human, the default human condition to try and seek out the old normal again. It's that that traditional model, and suddenly we're going to, focus on what we lost during this time. There's the other aspect, which is, the human condition is a very interesting state. If I said to you, Max, you are going to go and live now for the rest of your life in the slums in Mumbai, right? Your first reaction to me would be, are you crazy? No chance. I would hate that, you know. And then if something came up and you had to go and live in those slums, you'd be like, oh my God, I was right. I hate this. I hate this. I hate this. I hate this. Yeah, whatever. And we have this ability to kind of adjust to the existence, we're dealt, which is why on one hand, we will adapt. On the other hand, it's so important for us to be intentional about what world we want to live in. And my final point in there is that, we have to think about um, a transition into whatever our new normal is, or how
Yeah.
much ever it looks like, what was, I would argue, a non-working old normal in so many ways, is that we'll have a new class structure, especially in, and I think you mentioned that point, forget COVID-19, let's just talk Corona, because we're going to have many, many more of these, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to have those cycles. So you can imagine a time for the next 2 months where we're still sheltered in place or locked down, and we kind of think about what we do with our lives. And then we're going to have a period of time till not only the vaccine, and like an mRNA based vaccine, not the I don't know if you read Oxford's release the other day, but they have a vaccine that might be out in September, but that basically modifies the existing cold flu vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
And that period of time is going to be more like 24 months, not 13 to 16, because remember, it's not just that the vaccine needs to be on the market. 7 billion people have to be vaccinated, right? And so it can't be that, oh, it's certain kind of workers who are getting vaccinated first. So you have a 24-month period, and then you go to whatever you go to, right? And so imagine three classes of people in this 24-month period. The first class are people who have never been tested for COVID-19 or are currently testing positive, right? So you'd have to timestamp that. The second class of people are those who've been tested for COVID-19 and are negative, and you have a timestamp for that. And the third class of people are the potential current superhumans who have been tested for the antibodies and have tested positive for the antibodies, and they're the third category of people. And now you can imagine in social context, the first category of people will get their food delivered home, contactless, that we have today, right? The second category of people will be able to go to the restaurant, chat with the servers, pick up their food, and go home. And the third category of people will be able to sit in the restaurant, sit at
Yeah.
the bar, and chat and operate. And maybe that's a little bit of our reality going forward.
No, totally, totally. No, thanks for the feedback. Stanley asked about the Kurzarbeit system in Germany. So I have to say, right now in Germany, it's a interesting mixture of help from the government. So for freelancers, small and business owners, there is the option to ask for a Corona help fund. It's no string attached. You basically go to a website, you say, hey, this is my business. You click like, yes, I do need the money. No, I will not cheat. I really am in need of this money. And then literally a day later, you have up to 9,000 euro as a freelancer, 15,000 euro as a small company on your bank account. And this is meant as a short-term help to, that you're able to pay rents, etc., etc. Um, the Kurzarbeit is when you have employees and you send them basically home, and 60% of their salary can be paid by the government. So currently I have that with many clients. They send home the people like 2 days you're still working, so you get for 2 days you get your money from your employer, but then 3 days you're doing whatever, you're at home and you get that from a government as Kurzarbeitgeld.
Well, it's been a little bit of a difference in the UK. Perhaps that's why Stan was bringing it up. The announcement of, what was it, 350 billion of aid, up until last week, only 4 billion had been distributed, and there's this sort of complete meltdown of or disconnect between the various agencies that are handling this, and as a consequence, a lot of our UK small businesses are very seriously at risk of permanently being damaged and not being able to recover. And I think that what's interesting about what you said is that, and actually there's a precedent in the UK for this, which is retrospective legislation. So I think that what they should have done was follow the Swiss model, given 100% backed loans, given them out as quickly as humanly possible, and then if people were fraudulent about it, then prosecute them later.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy that they're applying business case testings and future viability tests and all the rest of it. We completely made a mess of it over here.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was just apropos of that. Sorry, it's a completely different conversation.
No, but like, yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see, because I think if we have like one learning out of this, every country is doing its own ways currently, We in Germany have huge discussions whether Austria is doing it better, whether Sweden is doing something better, whether the UK way is better, whether the US way, and at the end, time will tell. But as you rightly said, and Jamie wrote that, yeah, I think it's it's a huge opportunity right now to think about this kind of like new normal and to reconsider, do we really want that back? I mean, I think it's the easiest is to imagine this whole business travel thing. I think now with everyone being exposed to video calls and virtual meetings, virtual co-creation, whatever, will we really want to be back in a state where, can you join me for this meeting, and you fly in for like 1 hour? Why? I
I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I mean, such a common aspect to, certainly in a lot of the people in this room's life, are these conferences, whether it's Sigma or in the gaming world, or some of the blockchain, or your South by Southwest in Austin. All of these things, there is a need. I mean, humans, we need that sort of interaction. But I think it's going to be very interesting to see how the way. I mean, I'm a hugger. Amit will tell you that. I mean, I want to give people a big hug and give them a good handshake or whatever. But you'll find that I think that people like me will be, no, don't come anywhere near me thing, and that's going to be a very weird adjustment. But then equally, it might be that just as quickly, and Amit, going back to what you said about being thrown into the slums in India, you do adapt really quickly. Look how quickly we've all adapted to the confinement. Some are coping with it better than other people, and that has a lot to do with the environment that you're in. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I have a garden, an outside space, and I'm still in the city of London. But guess what? I've got no aeroplanes flying over. I've got the River Thames that I can walk by. There's that new whole COVID etiquette that seems to have emerged almost instinctively, so that you kind of pass people by, but sort of 2 meters apart kind of thing, as a natural reaction. And that's happened in the space of 6 weeks, 5 weeks.
It's crazy.
That's a sort of a, not even a sabbatical, is it? It's a small little holiday, well, actually quite a big holiday, but so the risk of going back because of there's a need as well. So you talked about the London tube system. You have no choice. If you have to go to work, and unless there's a new way of maybe staggering working hours, that means that there's a different flow of you know, rush hour and peak travel and that kind of thing. If you've got to go work, you've got to go work. And then even now, today, we're having this sort of discussion of the government about how effective the face masks are. When I saw that guy, Michael, sort of Mark or something, the science guy with the Joe Rogan show, he basically said, look, the face masks do have limited, you know, help, because if you're in a room with a disease like COVID-19, then, you know, you're just breathing the same air, you're going to get it, you know. So it's going to be a very, very odd future for sure.
Yeah.
And some will adapt and some won't, in my view, but hey.
But those were great closing words. I don't know if is the next host around already, or